Welcome to Clearwater Paper, Lewiston Mill. We are dedicated to maintaining a safe workplace at all times. By following our policies and procedures, you will help us to achieve this goal. Report all incidents and near misses to your supervisor and your Clearwater Paper contact. This is a drug-free work site. Alcohol or illegal drugs are not allowed on site. This includes the parking areas. Speed limit on site is 20 miles per hour unless otherwise posted. Visitors and vendors are required to sign in and out each day at the CPL or IPP administration offices. Equipment damage, fatalities, or serious injuries can occur if overhead and mobile cranes are not inspected properly prior to use. Crane accidents tend to be very costly in equipment losses, damage to property, and most importantly, injuries to workers. A crane in the hands of an unqualified operator can have deadly consequences. It is a requirement at Clearwater Paper that all crane operators are trained and certified to safely operate any crane on site that they may operate. Riggers shall also be properly trained on setting the crane up for the specific load and circumstances. Cranes shall be inspected following the applicable standards found in OSHA 1910 for general industry and OSHA 1926 for construction. It is important to remember that contractors and vendors are not permitted to use Clearwater Paper equipment unless permission has been provided by your Clearwater Paper contact and the contractor or vendor has signed a Clearwater Paper equipment disclaimer agreement. When entering or leaving the mill for any reason other than the start or end of your shift, notification must be given to your supervisor and your Clearwater Paper contact. This is to assure a proper head count in case of an emergency evacuation. Your Clearwater Paper contact is responsible to ensure compliance with all site safety requirements and will take appropriate corrective actions when the requirements are not met. It is your responsibility to understand and follow the established policies and procedures. If you do not fully understand these rules, or if safety concerns arise that are not covered in this orientation, contact your supervisor before continuing on to your job site. Gate passes must be displayed in vehicles at all times. Weapons are not allowed on site. This includes the parking areas. Loose-fitting jewelry is not allowed. Rings other than silicone, necklaces, and bracelets may not be worn. Medical alert jewelry is allowed but must be secured so as not to become an entanglement or catching hazard. Watches must be made from breakaway material or have a breakaway band. Only stud earrings are allowed. Earlobe loops or gauges must be filled with solid silicone plugs. No picture taking is allowed without express written permission from Clearwater Paper. Smoking is allowed only in designated areas. Your vehicle is not a designated area. Only water in a non-glass, spill-proof container is allowed in our operating areas. Consumption of food and beverages is not permitted in any area where there may be exposure to toxic materials. Wash your hands before eating or smoking to prevent contamination. Clearwater Paper may require training or equipment inspection records at any time. Personal protective equipment must be used and maintained in a sanitary and reliable condition, whether the equipment is furnished by the company or the employee. Defective or damaged PPE should never be used. The following personal protective equipment and dress requirements apply to all work areas. Safety glasses with side shields. Closed-toe safety shoes. Sandals, flip-flops, or other open-toed or open-heeled footwear are not allowed at any time in the operating or maintenance areas of the mill. Electricians are required to wear hard-toed safety shoes conforming to ASTM F241211 and ASTM 241311 with an EH electrical hazard designation on the label. Composite toes are preferable since any damage to the leather covering a steel toe cap will expose the wearer to electrical hazards. If a steel-toed EH shoe is selected, it is the employee's responsibility to repair or replace a damaged shoe immediately. Long pants and shirts with sleeves. Shirts may be short-sleeved, but not tank tops or shirts with the sleeves cut off. No portion of the midriff may be exposed. Outer garments must be maintained in a clean and reliable condition and replaced as needed. All clothing must be free of large holes or ragged and frayed edges. If your manager or Clearwater contact judges your clothes to be offensive, inappropriate, or too loose, you will be required to change. The department reserves the right to adopt and implement more strict clothing rules at any time. Loose-fitting clothes such as wide sleeves or unbuttoned cuffs, sweatshirts with long drawstrings, long straps, or scarves, or any other clothing which could potentially get caught in rotating or moving machinery is not allowed. Drawstrings and straps are considered long when they extend more than 4 inches from the body. Hoodies, hooded shirts, hooded sweatshirts, and hooded sweaters may be worn in operating areas only if the hood is tucked into the shirt. Hair should be restrained so it doesn't extend beyond the bottom of the collar. Ponytails, braids, etc. must be secured to the head and cannot be loose hanging hair. Beards longer than 2 inches must be restrained within 2 inches of the chin. Hearing protection must be worn in all areas where signs are posted. High-vis apparel covering the torso is required to be worn on site. A bicycle helmet meeting the requirements of the Consumer Product Safety Commission Bicycle Helmet Standard and a high-visibility vest are required whenever operating a bicycle on site, whether for personal or company use. All contractor employees operating vehicles or equipment will be required to wear seat belts anytime the vehicle or equipment is utilized. If seat belts are not included on the vehicle or equipment, they must be installed or the vehicle may not be used. Escape respirators are required to be with you in all areas except while working at CPD. At the Consumer Products Division, there are some additional requirements and restrictions which need to be observed. Personal property is not permitted in the production areas. This includes coats, sweaters, books, lunch boxes, decorations, backpacks, and other items. No glass or brittle plastic containers may be brought onto the production floor, operating areas, or raw material storage areas. This includes glass containers, glass bottles, glass mirrors, glass test tubes, etc. Items listed on the essential glass list are exempt from this restriction. Acceptable non-glass containers are classified as any container that cannot break or shatter upon impact, leaving particles behind. If any glass is broken in the operating area, that area must be quarantined. The quarantined area must cover a minimum 15-foot circumference around the point of breakage. The area must be cleaned up immediately and debris disposed of in a garbage container. Any tools used in the cleaning process, such as brooms and dustpans, must be disposed of immediately to avoid further contamination. Proper personal protective equipment must be used while cleaning up any broken glass. If the quarantine area overlaps a product zone, the operating equipment must be shut down until the area is clean. At that point, the product must be purged. Report any illness to your supervisor. Any illness that may compromise the safe production of any product or expose customers and consumers to contagious illness must be reported. Any open wounds must be covered by a long-sleeved shirt. If on the hands, gloves should be used to prevent product contamination. The supervisor is responsible for managing the disposition of sick employees with regard to floor exposure. Food is not permitted on the operating floor at any time. This includes items such as sunflower seeds, peanuts, hard candy, chewing gum, breath mints, etc. Food containers, utensils, cups, plates, and other food-related items are also not allowed to be in the production area. Beverages in spill-proof non-glass containers are allowed on the operating floor only at the operator's desk. When a machine part is discovered to be missing and that part may have been introduced into product, the shift supervisor must be notified. Smoking, e-cigarettes, and smokeless tobacco are only permitted in specifically designated smoking areas. Specialty PPE may be assigned depending on the nature of your job. Your company will advise you of proper donning and doffing procedures and the limits of your PPE. It may be necessary for you to wear a respirator while working in the mill. Your company is responsible for ensuring compliance with the following. If you wear a respirator, you must be able to provide proof that you are medically approved, trained, and fit tested annually. You must select the proper type of respirator for the hazard. Consult your supervisor for help in selecting the proper respirator. You must also inspect your respirator for any defects prior to use. To assure that you have a good facial seal, you must be clean-shaven. Long hair that does not extend longer than the bottom of the collar, mustaches, or sideburns are acceptable as long as they do not extend under the respirator seal area or create any other safety hazard. Anyone can initiate an emergency response. Call the fire department, 1-911 from an on-site phone, or 208-799-1911 from a cell phone. State the following: your name, the nature of the emergency, the location of the emergency, and the best access route. There are several events that could trigger an evacuation of our mill: fire, chemical releases, flooding, and other natural events. There is a mill-wide hazard alert alarm test every Monday at 10 a.m. The alarm sounds like this. This is an alarm-only test. You will not evacuate during the test. If the alarm sounds at any other time, proceed first to your inside gathering area. The person in charge at the inside gathering area will inform personnel if they are to evacuate to the outside gathering areas. If you are driving a vehicle when the alarm sounds, pull off to the side of the road, stop and turn off the ignition immediately and evacuate on foot. Contract supervisors must notify the person in charge at the gathering area of the names of contract employees on site and the names of unaccounted for contract employees. Follow the directions of the gathering area coordinators. No personnel shall re-enter the mill until the all clear has been sounded. Attention, attention. The emergency has been abated. It is safe for all employees to return to work. When the alarm sounds, all personnel must report to their inside gathering area or the nearest inside gathering area to your location. If the emergency requires evacuation to the outside gathering areas, await instructions from the communications station coordinator. The emergency shutdown procedure, or ESP alarm, is tested every Tuesday at 10 a.m. in the recovery boiler area, alternating weekly between number 4 and number 5 recovery boilers. An ESP is an event that may occur when water in any amount is suspected of entering the furnace and cannot be stopped immediately. If an ESP or other emergency occurs in the recovery boiler areas, you will be alerted with flashing red lights and a pulsating warning siren. All contractors, vendors, and visitors must sign in prior to entering number 4 and number 5 recovery boiler buildings. The sign-in boards are located just inside the entrance doors on ground level. If the ESP alarm is activated, leave your work site immediately. If possible, use the main protected stairway at the southwest side of the recovery boiler. Do not use the elevator or man lift, as loss of power could leave you stranded. Upon exiting the building, proceed to the primary evacuation gathering area in the turbine control room. If you cannot use the primary gathering area, proceed to one of the alternate gathering areas. Outside gathering area number 5 at the maintenance shop, or outside gathering area number 4 at the east chip dock. Follow the directions from the gathering area coordinator. All clears will be given by the Power and Recovery Superintendent or designee. No personnel will be allowed entry to the recovery boiler area for at least 8 hours following an ESP emergency. If required to leave the plant site, follow the instructions of your supervisor or person in charge at your gathering area. Only use vehicles designated for off-plant evacuation. Drivers will follow assigned evacuation routes. Evacuation route, inside gathering area, and outside gathering area maps can be found on the Safety SharePoint page and posted in departments at various places. Each contractor or vendor is responsible for having their own first aid supplies. In case of an emergency, there are first aid boxes located outside of control rooms, break rooms, and numerous buildings in the mill. The first aid station is located next to the Clearwater Paper Fire Department. First aid station hours are 6 a.m. Monday to 6 a.m. Saturday, and the Clearwater Paper Fire Department EMTs are in service 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. There are 2 hospitals and 2 medical minor express care facilities within the cities of Lewiston and Clarkston. Any injury or illness that creates blood or blood product hazards must be cleaned up following the blood-borne pathogens policy. Remember, anyone can initiate an emergency response by dialing 1-911 from any on-site phone or by dialing 208-799-1911 from your cell phone. When calling in an emergency response, state the following: your name, the nature of the emergency, the location of the emergency, and the best access route. A hot work permit is required in all areas for any activity that may cause sparks or flames, including such activities as welding, brazing, grinding, or cutting. Clearwater Paper will initiate the hot work permit, and the contractor vendor is required to adhere to any additional policies or procedures required by the permit, including providing a trained fire watch and a suitable fire extinguisher for at least 1 hour following the completion of the hot work and possibly up to 3 additional hours depending on the area. The contractor or vendor is responsible to review the work area and remove at a circumference of at least 35 feet all flammable and/or combustible materials, and will shield or cover combustible materials that cannot be moved with a fireproof tarp or cover before any hot work starts. Report all fires immediately to the fire department and to your Clearwater Paper contact. Hot work is any temporary operation involving open flames or producing heat and/or sparks. This includes, but is not limited to, brazing, cutting, grinding, soldering, sawing pipes, torch-applied roofing, and welding. The fire safety supervisor is the maintenance, operations, project manager, or contractor supervisor or knowledgeable person who has the overall responsibility for fire safety during any hot work task. Firewatch is a designated employee by the fire safety supervisor that is trained on the proper use of fire extinguishing equipment capable of extinguishing incipient fires and demonstrates an understanding of the procedures for reporting a fire. Hot work permits are carbon copied with a top and bottom. The permit should be filled out after evaluating the hot work area. The top copy is faxed to the fire department and given to the fire safety supervisor. The bottom copy is posted at the job site until the job and fire watch duties are complete. The hot work permit must stay at the job site until the hot work and fire watch duties are complete. After completion, the contractor will sign off on the time completed box. If the contract company completes the 1 hour and the 3 hour fire watch duties, all paperwork is given to the Clearwater contact. The hot work permit is then given to the fire department to complete the 1 hour continuous watch and the 3 hour periodic watch. The fire department completes the fire watch portion of the hot work permit if they perform the fire watch duties. The completed hot work permit is sent to the health and safety department. The fire department shall always provide fire watch in the following areas: on the chip, sawdust, or hog fuel handling systems, on number 1 and number 2 paper machines within the confines of the hoods and directly below the machines in the basement, in any permit required confined space where IDLH hazards cannot be removed or combustible dust cannot be removed or protected, in any remote location requiring portable firefighting capabilities greater than portable fire extinguishers, when applying torch down roofing, in any and all areas where there exists an elevated fire hazard as determined by the fire safety supervisor, Clearwater Paper contact, or the Clearwater Paper Fire Department. No hot work will be performed in these areas without the fire department in attendance. All mechanical, electrical, pneumatic, hydraulic, gravity, and other types of equipment having one or more energy sources must be locked out prior to any work being performed. Procedures indicating the number and location of energy sources are available through the Clearwater Paper electronic database, TK Pro. Your contractor contact will have procedures available prior to lockout. Each contract company is required to provide each of their employees with a personal lockout lock. Each lock must be identified with the name of the individual and the name of the company. This is to ensure there is no accidental startup of the system while the contractor is working on it. Every individual contractor employee that applies a lock will retain the key on his or her person. Every contractor employee that places a lock on a system or lockbox has the right to verify all lockout points prior to the start of work. Clearwater Paper cannot provide locks for contractors' use. There are two different types of barricade tape found within the mill: caution and danger. Caution tape is yellow and is used to warn of potential or known hazards. You may enter or pass through a yellow caution barricade after reading the label affixed to the tape and making a careful evaluation of the hazard. Danger tape is red and is used where there is an immediate danger or risk exposure or where mandated by specific OSHA requirements. You may not enter or pass through an area marked with red barricade tape until given specific instructions that it is safe to do so by the person responsible for the barricade. All barricade tape must have labels attached to the tape identifying the hazard. If you are using barricade tape on your job, you must remove it when the job is complete and properly dispose of all barricade tape and labels. Line of fire can be defined as placing yourself in the path of an energy source. Protect yourself from potential injuries by recognizing when you are putting yourself at risk. Do not stand in front of bleeders or plugs as they are being removed. Trapped energy could be released, causing debris or the plug itself to become a projectile. Be aware of your body position when swinging tools like hammers when parts of your body are in the way, walking under a suspended load, walking in front of or behind a moving vehicle, letting body parts get between moving equipment, using small hand tools like pocket knives or screwdrivers. Contractors working on the Lewiston facility will be managed to the regulations contained within OSHA 1910 for general industry, which requires fall protection at 4 feet or higher off the ground or next level. Contractors working at the Clearwater Lewiston facility are expected to manage themselves in adherence to the fall protection regulations contained within the OSHA Standard 1910. At the Lewiston site, we refer to this as the 4-foot rule. Fall protection may also be required anytime there is an exposure which could result in an injury regardless of height. A double lanyard system may be required depending on the work being performed to ensure 100% fall protection. Scaffolding should be erected in a manner that minimizes the obstruction of walkways, ladders, exits, and emergency equipment. All scaffolds must be inspected and marked with a color-coded tag by a qualified scaffold builder. Green tags indicate that the scaffold is safe to use. Yellow tags on a scaffold require the user to follow the additional instructions listed on the tag. Do not use red or untagged scaffolds. Prior to using a scaffold each and every shift, a scaffold must be inspected for hazards by a competent person and documented on the scaffold tag. Before entering into any confined space such as a manhole, vault, sewer, pipeline, etc., a proper confined space entry permit must be completed. All electromechanical types of hazards must be isolated in accordance with the lockout policy. Air monitoring will be conducted prior to entry. Clearwater Paper personnel will always have the responsibility to be the certifying entry supervisor. Trained contractor employees may take on the duties of the attendant with approval from Clearwater Paper. Confined space rescue attempts must not be made unless the attendant can raise the victim without entering the confined space using either a winch attached to their harness or using a tether line to pull them from the confined space. If the confined space rescue requires entry into the confined space, you must contact the fire department. Rescue teams and the means of summoning help must be identified on the permit before entering a confined space. Contractors are not authorized to reclassify permit-required confined spaces at Clearwater Paper. A trenching excavation permit must be completed prior to the start of any work. All excavations must be properly barricaded and lighted. All trenching and excavations must be approved by a Clearwater Paper competent person prior to any work beginning. When trenching and/or excavation reach the depth of 4 feet, the confined space policy must also be followed, with air monitoring required. When the trench is permitted as a confined space, a qualified attendant monitoring from outside of the trench or excavation is required. A qualified competent person must inspect excavations and/or trenches every day or at any time conditions of the trench or excavation could have changed, such as a rainstorm or broken pipe. A ground fault circuit interrupter, GFCI, is required for all portable electric equipment. Extension cords shall always use a GFCI adapter unless the circuit into which they are being plugged is already GFCI protected. Only qualified electricians may open breakers, panels, or disconnects at any time. Contractors who work in substations or MCC rooms must be accompanied by a Clearwater Paper qualified electrician. Contractors who will work on electrical equipment will be required to wear appropriate PPE for the associated hazard. Each contractor must clean up daily after completing the work. No material or trash will be allowed to accumulate in any area. Nails must be removed from boards and boards must be neatly stacked. Aisleways, walkways, and work areas must be kept clean and clear of debris at all times. Cords, leads, and hoses must be off the floor 7 feet at the lowest point. All waste must be disposed of in the proper color-coded or labeled receptacle. Orange bins are used for general industrial waste, including felts, tissue, acid sacks, air filters, drained oil filters, resin beads, and other general waste. Orange trash bins are used for office and food waste, except office paper waste, which is recycled. Yellow bins marked wood waste only are used for common wood waste, including forms, packing crates, and other miscellaneous wood materials. Yellow bins marked pallets only are special open-sided bins for this specific use. Green bins marked metal only are used for tubing, sheeting, shielding, metal housings, and frames. Blue bins are used for poly waste from extruders, reject packaging, and shrink wrap. Brown bins marked corrugate cardboard are for any types of corrugate and cardboard such as core stock, KDs, slip sheets, and other cardboard. Green bins marked electrical, copper wire are for any electrical wiring or copper. There are also specialty marked bins for glass and for lawn and tree trimmings. Aerosol cans must be collected in designated poly barrels or buckets marked empty aerosol containers. They will then be transported to the site carpenter shop for puncture and appropriate metal recycle. There are a number of potentially dangerous chemicals used in various processes at the Lewiston site. Always try to be aware of any chemicals which are present where you are working. In the event of a chemical release, audio and video alarms will alert you to the hazard and you should immediately move to the appropriate gathering area. Several areas of the IPP facility are covered by OSHA's Process Safety Management or PSM regulations. These areas are related to potentially dangerous chemicals and include chlorine at chlorine unloading, the lurgy plants, and the pipe bridges through the mill to the chemical mixers, chlorine dioxide at the lurgy plants and pipe bridges through the mill to the chemical mixers, hydrochloric acid at the lurgy plants, and turpentine at the relief cyclone to the turpentine storage area. Prior to beginning any work, contractors working within the PSM areas of the mill are required to attend additional training. Contact your Clearwater Paper contact to schedule this additional training. Prior to entering a PSM regulated area, all personnel are required to notify operations. All chemicals brought on site must be pre-approved by Clearwater Paper. All chemicals must be checked to ensure they are not on the banned chemical list. All chemicals must have safety data sheets, SDSs, available to all personnel and must be properly labeled at all times. All unused chemicals shall be removed upon completion of the contract and may not be drained on the ground, into drains, or into sewers at any time. All copies of Clearwater paper SDSs can be obtained by any person through the computerized SafeTech software system located on the Clearwater paper intranet from a Clearwater paper computer. Safety showers and eye wash stations are located throughout the facility. It may be necessary for you to utilize one of these stations should you be exposed to a chemical. Note the locations of these stations in the area where you are working. A comprehensive study has been conducted and asbestos locations in the Lewiston facility have been identified. When asbestos must be removed, it is only handled by asbestos-certified personnel. Equipment or items that are coated with paint will be tested for lead prior to performing work. If a lead swab turns red, contamination is immediately confirmed. If the lead swab does not turn red, samples of the paint must be collected and sent to an accredited lab for more sensitive testing. Lead paint will be removed to a minimum of 6 inches from the work area. Lead paint chips, dust, or residue must be properly disposed of as lead paint waste. There are several radioactive sources located on site. These sources utilize low-level ionizing radiation to monitor and control parts of the manufacturing process. All of the sources are clearly labeled as radioactive material. They are regulated by the National Regulatory Commission and are managed only by specifically trained personnel. Isolation of these sources is included in the lockouts of affected equipment. You are not authorized to handle or operate any of these sources. Consult your supervisor if you have any questions.